What's the good word, Josh? Your boy DKB here. So we got the news. The New York Jets may be heavily interested in Vikings running back Dalvin Cook if he ends up being released. Possibly some trade interest. I can't necessarily see us going that far with it when there will be better areas to try to pursue. But nonetheless, there appears to be some rumored interest. This was reported by KSTP's Darren Wolfson, who spoke about it pretty briefly. And there's a lot of teams that seem like they want to kind of have their hands in the pot, right? The Bills, the Dolphins, the Cowboys. It was actually rumored that Dalvin Cook may be looking at the Bills and the Dolphins specifically, which would be a little bit of a bite in the behind, right? When you want to consider adding another weapon in the AFC East, you'll want to see it in a green and white uniform and not anywhere else, especially when the Dolphins are loaded up with weapons already. The Bills are loaded up with weapons, but they can use a stronger run game to help support Josh Allen and that passing attack that they have. So outside of that, it seems like the Vikings may be holding out for a trade opportunity. There's a number of ways they can try to, salvage some cap space by getting rid of him. Right now, he's choking them out for a $14.1 million cap hit in 2022. So not something they would, like to have on the books whatsoever. And from what I checked into, he's not willing to take a pay cut to try to help them out. So from my understanding of the situation from the Vikings perspective is that they would consider taking less than ideal value for a guy like Dalvin Cook just to write off that huge amount of cap space that they would be able to save as opposed to outright releasing him and eating the majority of that. So that's music to our ears from a trade perspective. Again, not really a route that I want us to pursue. I think this is definitely the time where you still want to try to hold on to your picks and maximize your draft value, especially when you're going to be eating up a huge portion of your contract, of your cap space. If you're the New York Jets, between Aaron Rodgers and Quinnen Williams, CJ Mosley obviously is still eating up quite a bit of that cap space as well. So if we do see Dalvin Cook get released and the New York Jets decide they want to jump, most likely it's going to happen in July. And at that point, it is open season, right? We'll see which AFC East team wins out if the New York Jets are ultimately looking to do this. And it does make sense from the perspective that everybody's confident Breece Hall may be ready for week 1. But even Breece Hall himself said he's listening to his body. He's trying to do what makes the most sense for him longevity-wise. And, of course, being able to go out there and feel like he's playing as natural as he has his whole career. So will that be week 1? We don't know. Maybe that'll be later in the season. There's no need to rush it and kind of burn his career into the ground already. So having a guy like Dalvin Cook, who has already been a number 1 running back in the league and definitely one of the top tier ones that you're going to find, it eases that transition significantly. You can go out there and have him take 70-80% of the snaps on hand. Another report I saw said that the team values Israel Bandikanda as a number 2 running back already within this running back room. So you can have him eat up a significant portion of those snaps as well and sprinkle some in for Breece Hall until he gives you the green light that he feels like he's good. And then you're talking about one of the most dynamic 1-2 punches we've seen since Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt when you want to talk about having multiple high-profile running backs in the same room. So I love that scenario. What that ultimately means is, though, you're bringing in a 4-time straight Pro Bowler, 4 straight seasons with at least 1,100 rushing yards on the ground, and he's able to contribute in the receiving game, which is something we know Aaron Rodgers values out of a lot of his running backs. Michael Carter could be on the outside looking in come the end of the preseason, which is something I didn't consider until we had that Jets Flight Squad podcast that we brought Teagle on, and they mentioned him as a surprise cut. And this is a situation where you would say that's almost kind of clandestine for a guy like Michael Carter, who didn't have a phenomenal rookie season, but he did fairly well considering he was never valued as a #1 style running back in the league. Ended up being one of the most elusive guys to go out there and tote the rock as many times as he did. And then we seen a very very porous season from him last year, averaging 3.5 yards per carry. Didn't see any of the same elusiveness, hesitation hitting the holes. Doesn't bring much as a pass blocker necessarily either. And we even seen cases of the drops, especially in some critical moments for us, that potentially could have swung and won us a game or two down the stretch, which would have got us into the playoffs. So who knows how things would have turned out there. But with that said, you're looking at a running back room that would consist of Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook, and then Israel Abanikanda is most likely your top 3 running backs in that room. Michael Carter going to get cut. From a cap perspective, it doesn't it's a drop in a bucket. $1.1 million cap hit. You're not really it's not going to move the needle one way or the other, especially with the cap space we're already trying to open up. So that's just something you continue to try to account and allow for. So the biggest factor outside of how does he get involved in this offense, which I would say is a pretty smooth transition from what the Vikings like to run to what we would be able to go out here and accomplish. You'll find ways for guys with his skill set to transition. But the injury history, at least within the last 2 years, 2 ankle sprains in 2021, a shoulder dislocation in 2021, that crept back into 2022. And then you're also talking about the labrum tear that he had in 2021 in his shoulder. So something to be cautious of, right? Not necessarily the most durable guy in and of himself, a former ACL tear as well. But you drool over the idea of being able to go and see that tandem. It's going to be a tough day for defenses all over the place, because not only can we go out there and dominate in the passing game, Garrett Wilson, Corey, Allen Lazard, Mecole Hardman, Randall Cobb coming out there. We haven't even mentioned tight ends. We haven't even mentioned the running backs in the receiving game. But then you can go on the ground game and you can run them into oblivion as well. So that's exactly the type of situation you want to put yourself in, which lines you up to definitively, you almost have to have a top 10 offense at that point to match what was a top 5 defense last year. So music to my ears all the way around. I would be interested to see what would happen when it comes time for those contract talks, though, because the running back market is very weird when it comes to running backs, especially in a world where as soon as you're drafted in the first round overall, you're going to become one of the top 15 highest paid running backs in the league. So statistically, there's not going to be a lot of comparisons that make sense. But I mean, Jamal Williams is probably something in the range that we're looking at, right? He signs a 3-year, $12 million deal with the Saints. It's averaging $4 million a year. I think realistically it's something like 6 the way it's structured. But I would say, between 4 and 6 million is probably what you're looking at without, sacrificing too much cap space this year. Then you also have to think about, is this just going to be a 1-year rental? Is it going to be a multi-year contract that you want this guy with? Pair him with Breece and Aaron Rodgers for hopefully the 2 years that we ideally get Rodgers for. So a lot of question marks that goes into it. But if if the New York Jets really want him, the easiest part is envisioning him in this offense and what he can go out there and produce as Breece Hall's Superman to his Batman, right? So I don't know. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Very interested to see what the Dalvin Cook interest is among you guys, and I'll catch you again. Peace.